everyone, and welcome to The Digital Marketeer. I'm your host, Stephanie Beach, the founder and CEO of the Marketeer Group. Welcome to today's podcast. This podcast is designed to help you cut through the noise of the industry, to help you do less to learn more. And I'm coming to you live from Las Vegas at the biggest conference of the start of the year, CES, with a truly remarkable guest. Today, I'm sitting with Keith Weisberg, who is the partner and the head of product and technology at 3C Ventures. He is a veteran of the FAAMG world, having spent a decade at Google in various roles across search, YouTube, and DoubleClick, followed by senior product leadership roles at Amazon, advertising, and Apple. 3C Ventures is a strategic advisory that operates through three core pillars: consulting, convening, and co-investing. They function as operators first, helping brands and platforms and media networks navigate the shift from traditional retail media to complex commerce media networks. That's a lot.
It is.
Very excited to have you here.
And thank you for hosting.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm very excited. This is actually my first CES ever.
Welcome.
And this is my first interview of the week. So I'm very excited. Thank you for being here.
And thank you for letting me kick it off.
Of course, of course. So you have a very impressive background. Can you tell us a little bit more about what FAAMG stands for and what led you to C3?
Absolutely. So Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Meta, Google. It's actually a bit of a debate now, because do we call it the Magnificent Seven? Do we call it, because now Google's Alphabet, they continue to rebrand. And I think even in the background, we can see there's an NVIDIA ad that keeps going off. So these stocks keep changing. The way I look at it is it really helped shape me. I started at Google when I was 19. So I had no concept of reality.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a great way to start your career.
It was a strange one.
Yeah, for sure. And not to get too deep into it, but what were you doing there so young? And how do you feel like that kind of shaped you for what you're doing now?
To keep it at a higher level, I started on the technical side. So throughout middle school, high school, I was always coding and I was really more of an engineer. And then when I started to hit high school and college, I realized I really enjoyed coding and technology, but I was a little bit too social to sit in front of a computer for 8-10 hours listening to music and cranking out code. And so where I found myself at Google was on the engineering side, but more on the applications, not necessarily like the pushing code side of it. So I started in something at the time, it was called Search Quality Evaluation. And what we were doing is we were making sure that Google search behaved correctly on a high scale. So if you type in Apple, do you mean Big Apple, Apple the fruit, Apple computers? It was trying to figure out what people were doing and then also preventing fraud and malicious intent on search.
That's interesting. That's
yeah,
really
very different. Nothing to do with advertising, by the way. I found myself in ads soon after that. But beginning of my career was just like technical search work at Google.
Yeah. And then after that, you came to the dark side and never looked back.
I came willingly.
I know. I love it too. But so 3C Ventures goes beyond strategy and, delivers actual implementation. Can you share, a typical example of maybe a roadblock that some of your clients face that you help them with? And how do you step in beyond just a deck of this is what you need to do to really get them to understand the impact that what you're going to do is going to have?
It really depends on the client. So I don't want to give like a cop-out answer, but it truly is bespoke. We spend time listening and speaking with clients the same way they look at the 3Cs: consult, convene, and co-invest. It's a pretty broad thesis. And so we really need to talk to people to figure out what they need, what their actual needs are. And then when you talk about beyond the deck, for me, I'm a practitioner. So I'm actually pretty terrible at making decks. I know how to do stuff and get it done. And I usually need to partner with people to build that deck and actually articulate what I'm doing. Because as a product manager and spending so much time as a PM, my language is product requirement documents and user acceptance testing, and a lot of terms that when you start to talk to executives that aren't coming on the technical side or on the product side, their eyes kind of glaze over. They truly need a deck to understand it. So when it comes to something tangible that we do, oftentimes I'll sit, ask a lot of questions. If I'm talking, it's usually the wrong answer. I want to be listening and then figure out what the pain points are for a client and then propose something that will drive real tangible change for them.
And I think that that's so important, and what sometimes salespeople miss out on, or, what product people might not think to do, which is to ask those questions. The more information you have, the better of a solution you're able to provide or understand what type of solution they need. And then you could either have an offering for that, hopefully build out what you need to build out, or partner with somebody to be able to make, the outcome happen. So I think that that's very interesting coming from a product person as well, and really kind of diving into, what is it that we need that makes the needle move for the client. But you're not building out, bespoke technologies for them, right? Or are
Sometimes we are.
Okay.
So that's where it gets really interesting for me, is getting to do that actual build, where I might go in. It's kind of what you said about partners, where I'll be the first one to tell a client, like, if I'm not the right person to help you, I will send you somewhere better, because the best thing I can do for future business is give you what you actually need now.
I believe that. Yep.
And then I've answered some RFPs where I'm like, I can do this, but I think your RFP is wrong and you should change it, and here's why.
Right.
So to give you some more like real tangible examples of stuff we'll do, a lot of people come to us right now and they want to do AI. It's that
Doesn't
broad.
everyone?
we want to do AI. And so you have to kind of talk to them like, great, like what kind of AI do you want to do? Do you want one of these LLMs where you're typing in answers or, natural language questions and it's pulling you the right data? Or do you want back-end automation where everything's just happening smoother and quicker? Or do you want some combination? So that's where those questions really come in, is to figure out. Some people don't necessarily know what they want. Maybe they want, return on advertising spend, higher yield, greater efficiency.
What everybody wants.
Yeah. And you got to like unpack it and figure out like, what do you
What's
really
behind that?
Exactly.
And I think too, sometimes, and I think that's why asking the questions is such a good thing, because sometimes they don't even know what they want, or they're not even sure what they need to get to the solution of what they want,
Yep.
And there's been so many times throughout my career as well where, you're looking at data or, other solutions, or unpacking what they're really going after. And then you kind of realize that what they thought isn't even what's actually happening or what they actually need. And sometimes you're uncovering something else. And I feel like that's building a better relationship and building better trust between you and that client, which even like you said, okay, if I don't have something to help you, here's a partner that does. They'll remember that and hopefully come back, when the fit is right.
Exactly. And that's the other thing too, is like when something I also work with is sometimes private equity or due diligences happen, where one company wants to go ahead and acquire another company.
Yeah.
And I'll come in and look at the product, and I'll kind of be brought in as a product expert. But I often tell people it's a bit of an ivory tower. I need to bring in an engineer to look at your code and tell you, like, your roadmap looks good. Are you doing it? Or talk to your sales team. It sounds like your value proposition is correct, but are people actually purchasing and buying it? And so when you go in, I oftentimes bring in those partners with us. They're not necessarily working at the firm, because a lot of these people I feel like we're in a resurgence of independence.
Yeah.
And so I try to tap like that greater network of some of the best folks I know that are in between jobs or have permission to moonlight, which actually is happening at a lot of larger companies now.
I've noticed that as well. And I think that that's interesting, and we don't need to go off on that tangent right now, but maybe we should chat about it offline. You also recently noted that everything is a commerce network, and I loved that. And I do agree. I feel like now that people are really tapping into their first party data and understanding the value behind it, so many different businesses are trying to tap into that or utilize that if they're capturing it. So, it goes from banks to pharmacies to hotels to airlines. Like, the possibilities are endless, and some of the solutions are really impressive that are coming out too. How does 3C help these non-traditional players build out technology that they need and monetize their first party data when, again, it's something that isn't in their wheelhouse? For example, there's gyms building out retail media networks and hiring teams for that they never had before, airlines, things like that too. So how are you advising your clients that are non-traditional on doing that?
It's a good question. And once again, it's a no single solution fits everyone. It always starts with a conversation. So I'm always happy to talk to someone, to any brand, any agency. And I guess it's worth saying that if I'm talking to a brand, I'm naturally talking to the agency and letting them know I'm talking to their brand. The conversation usually is, why do you want to do this? And what are you hoping to get out of it? And then you get into the whole build, partner, buy, which is how all in do you want to go? If you're a traditional brand, chances are you already have incredible data on your customers. You know your customers better than anyone else, but you might not know how programmatic advertising works or how insertion orders work or ad servers and all these things that kind of come up and your eyes glaze over.
And that's scary to people.
It is, but you see these, 40 to 80% margins versus your, half a point margins you're getting on your retail, and you want to get involved.
Yeah.
So that's usually where the conversation starts is what do you want to get out of it? How aggressive do you want to go? And then usually it comes back down to data, which is what data are you willing to make available? How do you want to make it available? Get into terms and conditions. Can you even use this data?
Right.
And so it's kind of laying out that whole piece for them. And then when it actually goes to like the build, should they want to build, that's a much deeper conversation. But a lot of it, you want to get them on the thesis and kind of teach them crawl. And I can't emphasize enough, like test it before you invest in it.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that as well. And it has to be a big trust driver that you're creating with these clients to have them, build these things with you and launch these things with you, because like you said, they know what they might have, but they don't know what to do. And even when you're trying to hire for something that you might not know, it's hard to be like, okay, is this the right person? Do they have the right qualities? Is it the right technology? Are they putting the right things in place? And so, how are you building that trust in those relationships? I definitely think the crawling method is probably helping and like not pushing them all in. But how do you find like building that trust and explaining that to your clients to get them to buy in?
I think the best thing you can do is have them talk to their peer set and also talk to other folks that aren't necessarily you. So I kind of like to present like my thesis and like my thoughts on what's happening. I like to talk to their internal teams and see how organizationally, how they're fitting and whether they have the ability to move in the direction, the ways they want to move. And then I'll go ahead and have them talk to some other folks, like have them talk to the PackViews, the Criteos, like a lot of the people in the world that help activate commerce media, retail media networks, and see if it's a fit for them. And then the last thing you kind of like want to put it together is don't forget about the end users.
Right.
So that's like one of the things that I love about our industry is like, we're in it too. Like when you're walking into like a store, like you look outside behind us and you can see like a CVS, for instance. I don't think you can see it on the camera, but we can see it out the window. And the question is like, if you're a CVS, like think about your consumer experience. You know your consumer better than anyone else. What is the amount of ads that go from annoying to, oh, this is amazing. I did need to buy more toothpaste. And I'm so happy I partnered with Procter & Gamble to give the perfect reminder to the user as they walk down and the Bluetooth picked them up on their phone because they're signed into the loyalty program. And you've now created like a seamless, wonderful user journey that quietly had an ad that turned out to just be the perfect nudge and reminder to do something you wanted to do in the first place.
Yeah, which is really great. And I think that, even just explaining it like that, it's kind of like, oh, that makes sense, And I think that because we're in it and we're also consumers of it, we see both sides and we can kind of also explain what's happening and how it happens, but understand maybe some of the apprehensions and then remedy that as well by being a consumer for them. What are some common technical pain points that you come across often with your clients that maybe, weren't what you initially thought they would be?
I would say data governance and data lineage. So just to define those for the crowd, it's like for data governance, it's what rules do you have in place for using your data? How long are you storing user data? Who can access it? How can you use it? And then data lineage, which is if you have a grand source of data. So if everything is in one single location, what happens to it when it leaves that location and teams start to use it? Because that's where you can start to find things get fragmented. And when someone wants to apply something to an organization and they want to do commerce media, retail media, or AI, or have a dashboard that tells them what's happening in the organization for sales, you need to know where to get that data. And if it's not stored and kept in the proper way, and you can follow it up through the organization, that's when you really start to have a bigger problem and you can't even begin to crawl because you don't know where you're crawling and how.
Right. And that's, I think that that's something that when you're thinking about data, obviously, if you're bringing a product person on, that's their job to think about that stuff, right? But as, my background is primarily in programmatic and we use data very often, but, and for a long time, governance and, lineage is not something that you think of top of mind, but those are all things that are so important and things that you need to share with the audience that you're capturing the data from. So, that's a very interesting thing. And something that I wasn't expecting to have be the answer because it's not something that I would be thinking about either.
Well, it's very unsexy, right?
Right.
Like you want to have like a cool, shiny thing.
Yeah.
You don't want someone to tell you like, hey, you got to do this like technical fix that you have all this debt and you've been ignoring it for 7 years because no one gets promoted for cleaning up the floor. And like, I have to come in and tell you like, hey, like you have like a layer of muck.
Yeah.
And the other thing I like point out to people too, like when you're looking at the product world, there's like a good product manager versus a great one.
Okay.
Like a good one will tell you like the mics are working, they're comfortable, and like we're happy with the chairs. A great one is like, how are the cameras positioned? How much electricity are they using? How frequently do you charge the batteries? What is the time before they go into sleep mode? You got to like think about the whole consumer journey. And so that's the other thing you get these customers thinking about is they might know their consumer as best as possible, but they know it as the consumer for their brand, not necessarily as the consumer. They may be getting advertisements and making sure that they're respecting all their other contracts, or one competitor isn't quietly slipping into their store and pushing them out. And you got to think about that full consumer journey.
And I think that that's really smart. And that's where the value comes in of bringing in a company like 3C. You know what I mean? And really leaning into that expertise.
Glad to hear it.
One of your core pillars is convening, such as, you know, your presence at Cannes was huge. You guys put on a lot of different events and different gatherings for different people, and typically, you know, pretty higher up people as well. How is bringing together these diverse players, you know, helping to solve some of the fragmentation and some of the other issues that we see in the media landscape?
It's a good question as we are here convening.
Yes.
So it's kind of what I mentioned earlier with your peer set, right? Where it's one thing for me to tell you it, and I try to be as unbiased as possible. And when I'm biased, I let someone know, because I make a lot of angel investments. And so if I'm invested in something and I offer something I'm invested in, I will declare it quickly and fast. But when you put a commerce media, retail media network player or brand next to another brand that's non-competitive, put a farmer brand next to like a grocery store, and they start to have conversations, they start to see that there's a lot of similarities in these things. Like I think of companies like Kevel, which I have like a little bit, I should declare, I would love to see them do better. They're doing incredible now, but I do have like a vested interest in their success. Something like that, like they've looked at it and they've said like everyone needs the same basic stack. So you can start with a Kevel, and the next thing you know, like you can start hitting the run quickly. Or you can work with something like Criteo, where they're going to take a higher percentage, but you're going to be up and running almost instantly because they're going to plug you into demand. And I think that's the biggest thing I think about when it comes to like convening is you think of what everyone needs and how do you design that table, that presence, that group, so that everyone has that natural synergy when they sit. Yeah.
And, you know, I think that is also really great because it gives you different perspectives. You know, it allows you to, you know, maybe from a high level talk about some things that you're hearing or thinking about rolling out or making an addition to something and almost getting like real life feedback. You know what I mean? Yep. Without actually having to go into production or put it in a sprint and start to develop something where then you have to test it, you know, at least at the conceptual level. It allows for that. And it also then makes you guys smarter on what are people talking about. And if you're hearing it consistently, maybe it's something you should be building out.
Yeah. And that's where it gets really interesting too. Like when I think about my perspective as like a product person, I got to keep like a foot in the technical world.
Right.
So it's like a percentage of my time where I kind of need to be like sitting by myself, looking at APIs and codes or ads MCP or all these things
so
that we see
exciting.
Are coming out, right? Like I think they're amazing. Like it's cool to like look at these protocols and like see what they're thinking about doing because the code can't lie.
Right.
But when you talk to people can paint a rosy picture. And so it's cool to see like the ground truth, like what's the infrastructure look like and then what the conversation is that follows it.
Yeah, it is. And then it's also really cool. Like, I mean, I don't know if you do this or maybe even personally, but like track that too of like how far you take it and what it comes from it. Right. And then you find these tangible outcomes and you're like, this came from this one little idea. And that's really cool.
When I'm in-house, like back like at Google, it was really cool. One of the cooler things I got to work on was open bidding, formerly known as exchange bidding. I got to take that from nearly zero to a multi-billion-dollar product.
That is really
over like 4 years. And it's cool to go on that full journey. At 3C Ventures, oftentimes you're inserted in the middle of it in something. So sometimes people come to us early when they have like the kernel of an idea, but often they'll come to us and like, we tried this thing and like didn't really work, but like something's here still.
Yeah.
And then oftentimes when it really starts to take off, then you kind of step away. Mm-hmm. We still stay involved to make sure the continued success is there, but I don't get that full vertical depth that I used to have when I was in-house.
Yeah.
But the difference was like, I'm not trying to figure out like how to move one pixel over to increase user adoption by 7%.
Right.
That's an in-house product job.
Yeah. So you did mention being an angel investor and, you know, as a partner in the co-investing pillar, what specific gaps in the current technology market is 3C Ventures looking to fulfill through the investments?
It's a great question. So co-invest is a broader thesis. So there's a number of ways that you can look at it. One of like the more common angles I'd say that we address is the due diligence. Like we look at private equity or larger companies when they're going to make an acquisition, we'll come in and help them decide whether it's the right decision or not. Or if they want to take a toehold on an investment, if they want to take a public company private, or they want to begin to take over from that perspective, we'll have that conversation with them if the thesis makes sense as subject matter experts. So it's kind of a mixture when it comes to co-invest on how we're handling it. And I'd say like the other clear example was when you look at the Mediation Innovid work that we did a couple of years ago, Michael kind of worked his magic because a lot of the 3CV magic is Michael himself. And he managed to get a lot of the holdcos to invest in that deal since everyone works with Mediation and Innovid in some capacity now, given that every campaign starts and ends at billing and reconciliation, and Prisma is the answer there. They actually have some pretty cool agentic stuff that they put out.
Okay.
I've been wanting to play around with the Innovator. Like they have like a orchestrator they put together with Innovid.
Okay.
I know like people have very different reactions when it comes to Prisma.
Yeah.
But they know it, they use it. And I think especially when it comes to some of the agentic stuff they're doing, I think that exasperated sigh might become like a relaxed sigh once they start to get the wheels moving on that.
Okay, well, good. I am hopeful. So with your background at Apple, building privacy preserving ad tech, how are you helping your clients now with the need for high performance marketing, but also increasing, technical regulatory demands and consumer privacy and all of, the new laws that are coming to fruition? It's
a good question. In this administration, I think it's not as relevant as it previously was, but I spent a good portion of my career in like the ads privacy space.
Yeah.
At Google, when I kind of moved into a product rotation, I spent my time there with the privacy team, and I started to work on all the ways that privacy preserving ad tech, or we call them like PETs, would go ahead and protect user privacy while allowing us to monetize as efficiently as possible. And so when you look at a question like this, usually the conversation is around, there's like the legal line where it's like, this is what the line is. And also I'm going to keep it like on the American level, because when you get to Europe, it's a whole different game.
Yeah.
Like the European standards are higher. I think everyone knows that GDPR started there and it reverberated throughout the world on very similar language. And then when you talk about the US, there's California and then there's everyone else.
Yeah.
With CPRA and a lot of like the legislation that comes out there. But moving aside, like my own personal views as a consumer, it comes to privacy, take the US, kind of tuck California away. There's the law itself. Then there's the ethical barrier you want to do. And then there's what consumers will see and feel. Because when you grab the average person in the US and you start to have a conversation with them and you're like, hey, like, do you know your data is being sold? They're like, I had a feeling, but like, I don't know. And then you're like, do you want that to happen? And they're like, no, it's terrible. I don't want it to happen. And they're like, what if I told you that for $20 a month, you would have all of your data protected? Like, no, I want it free. Like, keep selling my data.
Right.
So that's the US mentality. That's why it gets a little bit tricky. And you got to look more towards like a company's ethics. Like the one example that pops into my mind is Disney. Disney doesn't use any parks data for advertising. Full stop. It's a family place. They want to keep it a family place. They don't use that data. And so it's really cool to see things like that, like to see for-profit businesses making ethical decisions to protect user privacy.
It's also like, does Disney World really need to use that data to advertise? People are going there anyway.
Yeah, but you can imagine like a programmatic billboard or like, that
it could be very powerful.
These high net worth people are visiting this section of the park,
right,
or this decision maker. Like I could do some pretty magical things there.
Right. Yeah.
In the Magic
Kingdom.
Kingdom.
In the Magic Kingdom, for sure. You definitely can. So you also often coach entrepreneurs on designing actionable plans backed by metrics, as I quote. What are, 2 or 3 North Star metrics that you believe, every modern commerce media business should be obsessing over this year? And, what are you guiding your clients to for the new year?
So when it comes to metrics themselves, I feel like there's the usual ones people regurgitate: monthly active users, daily active users, like how people are activating in your product. But it really comes down to like what the investment is itself, whether it's in our sector, and then whether you're trying to track like the basic ones, revenue, total like market value. Like it's a bit of a tough one.
It is.
I mean, it's hard for me not just to be like money, right?
Right.
Like, how are you making money? What is your margin? And how often are people using your product? Another one that comes to mind that I spend a lot of time thinking about is churn rate, which is if someone is using your product, why did they stop using it?
Yeah.
And then on the flip side, who are your best users and what behaviors are they exhibiting? And how do you find more like it? And a lot of times I'll push people to have the conversations and try and set up those conversations, because the best way to find out what's behind the numbers is the qualitative side that we continue to ignore as we chase metrics.
Yeah. And I think, the best laid plans are utilizing both and really understanding both. And being open-minded, I think, is also really important, because sometimes the metrics might show you something that you didn't think was accurate, or maybe there's a new audience that you could tap into, or a new data set, or something that is just extra, and like a pleasant little surprise. And I feel like a lot of times those are often missed because brands are so honed in on, this is my audience, this is who I'm going after. So I really like that approach, because there's so many other possibilities that could come from it too.
Yeah. And you're reminding me, almost more than 10 years ago, before I moved into the product world, I was an analyst. And so like my career I went from like basically technical work to analyst to strategy to product. It's kind of like this inevitable pull that happened. But back when I was an analyst and I was just like crunching numbers and like panning for gold, and back at Google trying to squeeze more juice out of YouTube, one of the things that we noticed at the time, this was when originals were coming out, and I was doing some deep work to figure out how to get more brand dollars. And something that came out was that we realized that the optimal time to show an ad to someone on YouTube was 6 to 8 times. Oh. And at the time, it was called like the N number. It was generally 3 for advertising.
Right.
How do you want a frequency cap? It was always 3. We did some pretty amazing studies, like backed by people way smarter than me in like the advertising space, to do user studies and determine that it was 6 to 8. And we did it in England, was like the primary place it started. And we scaled it out to Germany. And we kind of figured like, this is generally, the number is more than 3. And so as we started to have conversations with people to try and raise the frequency cap from beyond 3, a lot of people were just kind of stuck in their ways.
Yeah, because that's what they're used to.
Yeah, because it's just, even though that we can show them the numbers and we're like, this is how it is. They're like, we've been doing TV advertising since before you were born, young man. Like, we know what we're doing. Like, you keep your data.
That's so funny. Those insights are really valuable. And that's really amazing to understand that like that one vehicle and, that one outlet is different from all of the other media. But every media should be treated differently, as we know now. So what's one thing that we should all be doing for a successful year?
Using LLMs every day, all the time. Okay. I've stole this one from Shelley Palmer. I remember I was sitting down with him. It was at Possible. I got lucky enough. I got placed next to him for dinner.
Oh, nice.
It was a magical experience. And I was talking about the LLMs, like the big ones, right? So the Chat GPTs, the Geminis, the Claude Anthropics, like kind of, I call them like the big 3.
Right.
There's also like, you could spend the whole conversation talking about all these other models.
There's so many.
And I kind of point out like these big 3 ones as like the ones that I feel like are the most consumer facing.
Yeah.
I feel like I have to
most
caveat
popular,
this.
I feel like.
Yeah, because Meta has like Llama. There's so many out there.
Yeah.
The biggest thing is be using those every day, all the time. And so I use them constantly. I carry 2 phones because I'm on the product side. So I want to be an Android and iPhone at all times. And so I have Gemini running on my Android and I have ChatGPT running on my iPhone. And oftentimes I'll just run queries in both. I'll ask the exact same question.
I do the same thing.
Yeah,
I want to see the different answers. I do prefer Gemini personally, just because of the way, like the answers that it gives me, and it kind of understands my tone a little bit better. But I will use different chats for different things. And I do sometimes put in the same prompts and see what the differences are.
But 1 year ago, was Gemini your favorite?
1 year ago. I don't know. I have to think, because I've been using it for a while, and I do have the app on my phone. Yep. I use it on my computer and stuff. So maybe, but I think I was using ChatGPT because I know it's the product, but it's almost like the brand name, kind of like when you're like, oh, give me a Kleenex, but you really just mean a tissue, or, oh, go Google it, but you really just mean go search it. You know what I mean? So I kind of feel like ChatGPT took over the like brand naming of
first mover advantage.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But so I do feel like I was using ChatGPT for a while, and then once I was introduced to Gemini, I switched.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? So you'd have never switched if you weren't introduced.
Right.
And so that's why I'm like, everyone should be like playing around with these. And it's a burden because it's like I've just asked everyone to spend 5 to 10% more of their time doing other things, or like Perplexity is like another one I used a lot.
It's so helpful.
And I'm paying for all the pro version. So like I'm cringing every time I pay $100 a month for like all these baseline ones. And then I finally took the plunge on Gemini for Ultra, which is like really painful.
Yeah.
But
which one's your favorite?
Depends what I'm doing.
Okay. Fair.
How do you pick a favorite child?
No, well, depends on the day.
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding. This was so much fun. Thank you so much for being here. I have 2 fun questions for you. So what is one piece of tech everyone is talking about this year that you think is a total gimmick?
Ooh, that is an interesting one. Piece of tech that everyone is talking about that is a total gimmick.
In your opinion?
Yeah, no, it's
or something that maybe could be better.
I think like agentic is overhyped.
Okay.
I don't think it's a gimmick. I think it's going to be major. We're already feeling the changes from it.
Yeah.
But to actually do it and use it, I think there's a lot of control needs to be given up.
Yeah.
Where if I want to do agentic creative work, can my ad server handle unlimited combinations and permutations of custom creatives for users? As a brand, am I willing to let it be totally off in the wild and not approve every single one?
Right.
Like, I think that's where the technology is missing, is like that piece of scale. A lot of the smaller brands are ready to gamble on it, but I think a lot of the bigger ones are a bit scared to give up control. I feel like, I forget which brand did this recently, but one of the brands came up with a Christmas ad that was generated entirely with AI. And I remember they had to pull it off the air.
Oh, wow.
Because there was so much backlash from it. I don't want to get the brand wrong. I know like it wasn't Coca-Cola because they nailed it with the creative.
Right.
They come up with creative, like they did it last year, and it was like they're playing with the quirkiness of it and they're like letting everyone know.
Yeah.
But
some of it's really great and some of it I feel like is really fake. You could tell.
But if you like own the campiness, it can
Right.
become a really good ad.
Right.
And then meanwhile, you have all these creatives that are in the background that are wondering like what's going to happen to their careers.
Right. That is true. And a bit scary in some ways. And what is your best tip for surviving a week in Vegas? Now, I know you live here, so it's a little different, but when you're here at CES on the strip, what's your best piece of advice?
I'm going to give you 2.
Okay.
I'm going to give you the one for the irresponsible person,
Okay.
which is IVs and B12 shots.
Okay.
So if you get like a quick pump up, like just a vitamin shot in the middle of the week, it can really help push you through. Just because you're spending so much in time. Like when people talk to me about CES, they're like, oh, how's the floor? Like what technology do you see? And I'm like, I saw suites in the Cosmo and the Aria.
Yeah.
And so like spending so much time indoors, I feel like that's would be my irresponsible tip, is like pump yourself with healthy chemicals.
Okay.
My responsible tip would be try to slip in some workouts is one of them. And the other one is like get a little bit of sunlight.
Yes.
So like one thing I like sneak out people, like a day like today, I'm going to turn one of my meetings into a walking meeting and we'll just like walk around outside.
Yeah.
And like
that's
get some
so
sunlight.
nice. Yeah. Because especially with all of like the bridges and the tunnels from hotel to hotel, sometimes it's just hard to get a breath of fresh air.
Exactly.
This was so great. Thank you so much for your time and for being here. Where can our listeners find you if they're interested in continuing the conversation or working with you?
That's a great question. I would say I'm trying to be more active on LinkedIn. Call it like a 2026 goal of mine. So feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm trying to be more active and really time box a bit of time to answer my DMs and comment and be more involved in a presence.
Awesome.
So I feel like that's the best place to find me. I haven't been able to get onto the X Twitter game as much as I'd like. A lot of my time is spent trying to avoid context switching. So I'm not able to be everywhere the way I'd like to be, or naturally shoot me an email.
Yes, I know. It is hard to be everywhere. It really is. But thank you so much again. And thank you everyone for tuning in. Please subscribe and download. I appreciate all of your listeners. Until next time. Bye, everybody.